just, I don't know if there's ever... Hey.
He's remarkable, and look at that one. Bo Jackson says hello. A drive, deep left. Grand slam. Bobby Witt Jr. wins it.
Pump it in there, baby. Just keep matriculating the ball down the field, boys.
McKinnon is in at running back. First down and goal to go. Play action fake. Right side draw. Touchdown! Kansas City! McCall Hardman for the first time in 6,944 days. There is a back-to-back Super Bowl champion.
Welcome into another edition of the Die Hard Sports KC podcast here on the Thompson Steak Facebook page and YouTube channel. My name is Matt Thompson, checking in with you as always, and we are back. You may remember that last March I sat down with my good friends Devine and Brad Beck, and the Royals have certainly surprised us, some of us. Lucas had a pretty solid prediction. He was more optimistic maybe than Brad and I were. But
not surprised at all.
I'm sure... Live it up. But the Royals right now are getting cold at the wrong time, but we'll get into that in just a minute. Gentlemen, welcome back. Glad to have you, and excited to talk about a potential playoff run for the Royals that I certainly didn't expect, but it's been a great year in many respects. And what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a great season overall, and a lot of surprises and a lot of unsung heroes to talk about throughout this season.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and yeah, I just hope we can, keep that optimism going these last 8 games and reach the playoffs.
We're working on it. So the Royals right now 82-72, and when we sat down in March, it's proof that we, just like any other listener, we're just fans. We don't always have the right answers. And many things have kind of taken us by surprise, which we alluded to that in the first podcast. But biggest surprise for me, gentlemen, Seth Lugo. He has a career high in wins. The ERA is very respectable. He's a first-time All-Star. He has in many ways been our ace, along with guys like Cole Reagans and Brady Singer. Our starting rotation has just been phenomenal. Our bullpen has been lacking at times, but all year long it seems like we've had starting pitchers who we can rely on if we have a losing streak. This is only the second time all year we've lost more than 4 games in a row right now, because you have guys like Reagan, Singer, and of course Seth Lugo that go out there and just slam the door and put an end to these losing streaks and keep it brief. You guys want to talk about just the starting rotation? What surprised you the most?
I would go with... Well, I guess Lugo's probably the biggest surprise, although he had a really good season last year. Same with Waka. I think just the addition of both those two, although I wouldn't know if it's the biggest surprise, but it is the most welcome surprise, because both those guys have been great. Reagan's continuing where he left off. Is fantastic for this team in the future, as well as Brady Singer getting a nice bounce-back season. So, and then you can't take away from Alec Marsh being just a solid 5th starter in this rotation. The whole rotation 1 through 5 has been, knock on wood, healthy, and for the most part, and
outside of Waka's foot injury.
Yeah, outside of Waka, and then Alec Marsh had a little stint there before they sent him down, I think. But outside of that, the starting rotation has been the reason that we are where we are right now.
Right, and let's not forget they brought in Michael Lorenzen, who's unfortunately dealt with a hamstring injury, but he's very solid. I like what they've done with veteran leadership. Brad, what do you think?
With the vets, to go back to our signings of Lugo and Waka before the season, I think I was super excited about Waka. Lugo, I thought it was a solid signing, but man, has he turned out to be just an ace we needed. And, brings that, he knows what to do. He goes to work each day, and I think it's rubbing off on these young guys. Singer.
Perfect.
And,
Sorry not to cut you off. I vowed not to do that. I'm really going to try not to cut you guys off. I get so excited about talking about different things, but exactly like Brad alluded to, you see these guys, it's common to see them all sitting together in the dugout, especially when a guy gets pulled from a start, and you see the veterans, all of them just interacting as a rotation, like a unit, and they seem very close, and I think it's going to pay big dividends for guys like Cole Reagans and Brady Singer going forward. And I know we talked a lot about Cole Reagans coming over for Aroldis Chapman last year in the first podcast, and Cole Reagans this year became the first Royals lefty in a very long time to have over 200 strikeouts. And I believe is he the only Royals lefty, maybe?
The only
Royals lefty to have over 200 strikeouts, and the first Royals starter to have over 200 since Zach Greinke, maybe in 2009. So very impressive. He's got ace stuff. Brady Singer, we talked about back in March, had to have that bounce back year for the Royals. I feel like he's done that. He's hit a few bumps in the road. He's had a few rough starts here or there, but all in all, it's been fairly consistent. They all have fairly low ERAs, and things are looking really bright for the Royals as a starting rotation going forward. Now, Michael Wacha likely going to test the free agent market. He's had a good enough year to where he's probably going to test the market. I would love for the Royals to find a way to bring him back. He's been a really good leader, like we were just talking about. Outside of that, and I love bringing Michael Lorenzen in. Is that we just have him to the end of the year? I didn't look that up. I don't know if...
That sounds right.
Yeah, I would. Hopefully we're able to bring him back maybe. And then young guys that we talked about the first go around, Chris Bubich and Daniel Lynch. Now, it's a small sample size, right? But they've kind of found themselves out of the Royals bullpen, a bullpen that we thought would be led by veterans like Will Smith and Chris Stratton, who's really... Don't get me started on Chris Stratton. I'll get into him a little bit in a minute. But they've really dropped the ball. The veterans have, but these young guys have found a way to step up. And the bullpen is still a concern of mine, but I'm optimistic with guys like Lynch and Bubich, who the Royals still say they're looking at potentially as starters, but the fact that they've been able to find themselves in the bullpen could be really clutch and huge as we potentially go on a playoff run. So let's talk about that, though, gentlemen. 82 and 72 right now, getting cold at the wrong time. Brad, I'll start with you. What do you want to see the Royals do over these they've got 2 left against the Giants. They play the Nationals, and they ultimately end the season against the Braves. They play the Giants this weekend at Kauffman Stadium. They got 2 more games there, and then they head on the road to end the season. What are you looking for the Royals to do to get into the playoffs and make a push?
Well, I think our bats need to start getting going.
There you go.
They have just absolutely gone cold, and it goes back to pretty much when Vinny got hurt. I know we'll probably talk about that later.
Big news. No, jump in. Go ahead.
With Vinny going down at late August, our offense has just tanked. Yeah. Bobby had probably the hottest July and probably August of Royals batter that we've seen since George Brett.
Oh, man, since 1980 probably, yeah.
And since Vinny, that protection is gone. He's batting, I think, like 230.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still having an MVP year, but, man, our bats need to get going because our bullpen is finally starting to show up. Our pitching has been there just like it has all year, but our bats are not showing up.
I agree. And just on a side note here, since Brad threw out Bobby Witt Jr., let's talk about Bobby Witt for just a minute. We all were so thrilled about that signing we talked about before the season. And I expected big things. I'm not sure I expected this type of season. As far as driving it, he's driven in 108 runs so far, 32 homers, 30 stolen bases. The first shortstop in Major League history to have back-to-back 30-30 seasons. A true MVP candidate. I mean, I think Aaron Judge beats him out. Aaron Judge has had a ridiculous year. But I'll go ahead and say this, and I'm obviously a diehard Royals fan. Aaron Judge is a tremendous player, tremendous athlete. But as far as the things that Bobby Witt can do, I think Bobby Witt offers you more in the way of he's a true 5-tool player. Not that Judge, I'm not sure how much speed Judge has. I said Judge probably has 4 out of 5 of the tools there, but I take Bobby Witt, and then watching him every day, it's just, you never know what he's going to do. There's always, seems like one play a game, really, where either on defense or offense, I mean, he's the guy. We haven't had that guy late in the game, 1-1 tie, say, just for example. he's the guy you want up. He's the clutch player, and he's probably, I would argue the best player in baseball, and he's wearing a Royals uniform, and he's going to be wearing a Royals uniform for a very long time. Now, Lucas, want to get your thoughts on what Brad was saying, because obviously the offense has gone cold at the wrong time, and we've brought in some guys. Why don't you talk about, if you would, just your thoughts on the guys they brought in to try and, I think, collectively make up for Vinny's numbers. Guys like Tommy Pham and the former MVP, Yuli Gurriel, and Robbie Grossman, Paul DeYoung also. What do you think about those moves and just your thoughts on the offense in general going forward?
Yeah. I was surprised by those moves when they made them, just because it didn't. I guess it's a good example of J.J. Piccolo really taking ownership of his role, and also reading the room when it comes to a team that's actually fighting for something. When you have a player that goes down that was on track for 110 plus RBIs, and is one of the most clutch hitters in baseball, with like top, I want to say he was 6th in runners in scoring position with 2 outs. When he went down, I was excited that they at least made the moves to get some veterans in that had postseason experience, that had that knowledge of what a September push looks like. And I think they're all playing up to pretty much their potential. What they bring in leadership and offensive production. So I enjoy watching Yuli Gurriel. I remember watching him on the Astros and others. But is it going to replace Vinny? No. But it is nice to get some of those veterans in, and hopefully during especially these last 8 games, and they can rally around that and try and make that push into the postseason, and from there, you never know. I mean, starting pitching can take you a long way.
Look, I think any way that we end the season, it's a victory, right? Because we lost 106 games last year. Just to be over 500 is a moral victory of sorts. Like I said, I like the moves as well, bringing these guys, and you can't replace a Vinny. And I will say, just in terms of the future, you have found your first baseman. I think he is that consistent, and his defense is something that we kind of knocked, or maybe it was me. I'll take the fall on this. I knocked his defense. I said, well, he's not going to be any Eric Hosmer. I'll tell you what, maybe not athletically, but the things that he's been able to do over at first base, he's had a damn good year as a first baseman, and defensively for sure. Yeah,
I think he there was all those, he came out and said how much he worked on his defense in the offseason. It's a really fun story to see someone actually work on something in the offseason and just immediate payoff, to have like one of the better defensive seasons at first base, and then having Salvi there as a as a pretty good first baseman also, that keeps everyone fresh. That's been really good to see.
Yeah, Brad, let me ask you about Salvador Perez. The captain has had another stellar season, drove in another 100 runs, and he looks like he's getting younger out there. His legs still look fresh. Credit to the Royals for playing him more at first base, but and he's up for, not just on the field, he's doing amazing things, but he's the Royals' Roberto Clemente nominee for that award for like the 3rd year in a row. Your thoughts on the captain?
I mean, could you ask for a better person to be on the Royals? Just the clips of him playing, backyard ball with those kids. That's why he's up for the Clemente Award. He's just the best guy of all time. And like you said, he looks younger. He's just Mr. Consistency. And him playing at first base, his defense, I was shaky on it before the season. He's played great there. Yeah. He really has. I don't see him slowing down really anytime soon if he gets to split time at both. But, yeah.
Between DH and first base, it's great to have that leadership. And I think some fans may be getting a little bit frustrated and impatient right now. And, Lucas, you were talking about last night where you listened to Josh Vernier, and a fan called in and said that, someone needs to take ownership in that clubhouse. Well, we all agreed. We were talking about this before we came on the air, if you will, and we all agreed that there's leadership in that clubhouse, and they can bounce back. It's been frustrating because it seems like, in part, it's just baseball. It seems like when some of your main bats go cold, an entire team can go cold real quickly. But there's a lot of reason to be very hopeful. I mean, the division seems to be slowly slipping away, but a lot of hope still for a wild card. And I was texting back and forth, I think with you, Brad, the other day, and you said, they just need to get hot. And it's all about getting hot at the right time, because if you remember going back to 14 and 15, specifically 14, playing in these playoff-type atmospheres can get you ready. And if you're hot at the right time, the Royals reeled off 8 straight wins all the way to the first game of the 14th series against the Giants. So a lot of reason to be optimistic. Real quick, want to transition into the bullpen. And I promise not to be too negative. Promised my father that last night, so we'll try and be positive. The bullpen's been, I think we characterized it back in March as a mixed bag, and it truly has been a mixed bag. And just one or two things that I want to talk about regarding the bullpen that have confused me. Just as an everyday Royals fan, the Royals seem to go to two guys that are now on the IL, and maybe that's a blessing in disguise. I hate to say that, but Chris Stratton has had a terrible year, and as has James McArthur. Now, I think Chris Stratton, the Royals part ways with and just move on. I still have a little bit of hope for James McArthur, but I almost wonder, and this is something that maybe I shouldn't even be bringing up, but I'm going to do it anyway because I do that all the time. Guys, what do you think? Do you think at times the Royals have too much of a focus analytically, on matchups? And say you've got a guy like Chris Bubich or Daniel Lynch out in the bullpen that's a lefty, but the matchup maybe favors a righty, and Matt Quatrero decides to bring in Stratton or, James McArthur or somebody that is McArthur. Yeah, so he's just, sorry, I'm stuttering all over myself, but your thoughts on Stratton and analytics, go ahead. I'm going to look at my notes and try and better prepare for my next segment. Go ahead.
I'll say this. Unless I have no problem with it, really, because unless you've proven you can get every guy out, like you are that guy coming out of the bullpen, which it comes with time for sure. I think matchups are they're fine. They're a good way to go, because unless you've proven that, which the Royals have, maybe Lucas Ursig is going to be the guy who is, like they've done a few times, or most of the time he's been here, where it's like leverage, as Matt Quatrero says, all about leverage. Mm-hmm. They don't have many guys that have proven that they can get anybody out at any time. So I'm okay with the way they've handled that for the most part. I think the bullpen's been, it's just been a bullpen. It's been, I would say it's average. They go hot and cold, and I have not a lot bad to say about the bullpen as a whole. And the way he handles it at times is frustrating, but at the same time, it's, unless you have those dudes like we had, I feel like it's hard to, as a Royals fan, it's hard to grasp a regular bullpen with guys who are, not 7th, 8th, 9th inning every time, no matter what. Like,
that was historic.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. So it's hard to get that off your mind when you're talking about especially a team that's trying to win right now, which who would have thought that at the start of the year? So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to talk about a bullpen.
Yeah. All the more reason. And again, I'm trying not to be negative. We have nothing to complain about given that we lost 106 games last year.
If I could go on a tangent, just a small one,
sure.
Just a real quick one. It kind of ties back into some things we've said, but I think it's an interesting place that this team as a whole in general finds themselves in. But I think it's even more interesting as a Royals fan, because it feels like, and it goes back to like that caller on Vern's show, and just in general people's feelings towards the team. I don't think Kansas City understands, and even me for that fact.
You,
understands,
the leader of this podcast with your winning predictions, not even you
me,
understand?
I didn't know how it would feel because I've never seen it, but what just a good baseball team looks like. Like, I feel like it's either been a surprise out of nowhere or at 14, and in 15 you have expectations, and then but then you go back to like straight down, and after like 2 seasons back to 100 losses, and you're just kind of like what a good baseball team feels like. And I think that is it's tough in the day-to-day especially to understand it. So I think we've been spoiled this year is honestly what it feels like with where we were last year. Always going to have high expectations for the team because I just look at the players and man, with Bobby Witt Jr. it just feels like anything's possible. But I don't know. It's fun to be able to have the conversation now, because at the beginning of the year, I felt like I was probably a little over hopeful with the team, and to see them actually play to a winning season is incredible stuff. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. I appreciate that, because I think I hadn't really thought about that in terms of all those years prior to 14 and 15, we were building, right? And then you had to put the last few chips in place as to where, we're coming off 106 losses in 2023. And I think we were somewhat optimistic that we were going to take a step forward, but to be in the playoff hunt this late in the year is outstanding. Now, I want to jump back to a guy you mentioned in Lucas Urseg.
Yeah.
That really has been clutch. HUD has given him the name Lights Out Lucas. Got him from the Oakland Athletics, and he's got a lot of potential. I'd say he's, at this point anyway, the closer of the future. He looks like he has all the tools. Brad, your thoughts on Lucas Ursig?
I mean, what a trade that was. He's been everything and more that we've asked for. He's, not to go back to, 14 and 15, but he feels like he could have fit right in that bullpen.
Yeah.
And it's what we dearly needed. And with these other guys, like you mentioned earlier, Lynch and Bubik stepping up in the bullpen, it's really solidified what we have there.
Yeah, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic even going forward. And I feel like Lucas, to your point, next year when we sit down, no matter what happens in the playoffs, wild card victor or not, likely we're going to be going on the road. It's going to be tough, but if you get hot at the right time, anything can happen. But building blocks for the future. And as we look at that, you kind of go around our team. And I think for me, the weakest point, really hasn't changed too much. I mean, you got the mixed bag. We'll see what happens with the bullpen next year. But also, our outfield leaves a lot to be desired. I feel like Hunter Renfroe was a signing I think we were all on board with going back to March. And he had a really rough start to the season, but he's been a pleasant surprise. And we looked it up before we came on the air, and he's got $7.5 million player option that I wouldn't be surprised at all if he takes that. And I wouldn't mind bringing him back in right field. Everybody knows that I give Kyle Isbell a really hard time. Kyle Isbell is very defensively. I mean, he's elite as a defender out in center field, but the bat just doesn't seem to be there consistently enough for me. And then, Brad, want to jump over to another guy, MJ Melendez, who we were talking about a little bit earlier. Where are you at on the guy we call Merv? And I think a lot of his teammates call him Merv. I gave him the nickname before the season, Big Money Merv. And he's been clutch at times this season. Just talk about Merv's season and whether you see him as a valued piece of that outfield going forward.
I mean, I don't think he's going anywhere. Sure, his start to the season was abysmal. I think he was batting $160 or something at one point. Mm-hmm. But I feel like midway through, he started hitting more. What's he, right around 200?
He's currently he is hitting about 209.
Yeah.
17 homers, 48 RBIs.
So he raised his batting average.
44 RBIs, I think.
40-ish points.
Yeah.
Since, mid-season. I mean, so he's stepped it up, and like you said, he has been clutch. He's had some really clutch home runs, hits. His defense is great. Yeah, I think going forward, he's going to get that opportunity to continue.
And there's a big, I think something that's easy to overlook, and then Lucas, I want you to jump in here. Easy to overlook that this is a guy that came up as a catcher, and in just a few years, it's not easy to transition, and I trust him out there. He's got some wheels. He makes really good plays and smart decisions, and that's a big adjustment to go from a position. As far as I know, he had been a catcher most of his life, and obviously it helps to be a good athlete, but I think he's very solid defensively. Lucas, you want to jump in on
he's always going to be under a microscope just because of the core. He was the core, if you will, that he's a part of. But yeah, he's been solid and he's been improving, and we'll see. I mean, if the bat can keep coming, he could show up and play everyday left field moving forward. There's not expectation wise, you really don't need a guy that's gonna be absolutely 300 hitter out there. Alex Gordon was fantastic in left field. He was like 240 lifetime, somewhere in that range. So, he just keeps growing. Like you said, he's really. I think this was his first full-time year, only left field, no catchers meetings. They said, he just got to focus on 100% left field. So, hopefully, if that next year he'll get his opportunity, I'm sure, and you just got to keep building.
And I may have already said this, so I apologize if I repeat myself here, but you've got a guy that, like Brad said, had an abysmal start to the year, 160, just horrible offensively. But he never seemed to pout. He was always running balls out, maximum effort all the time. And it seemed to have a positive attitude in the dugout, doing things like the Salvi splash with Bobby, always seemed to be a team player. And that's something that I look for as a fan. I don't want to see the guy that's down in the dumps or throwing a fit. Or my biggest issue is if he would have shown a lack of hustle, then it's like, okay, send him on a bus tomorrow, get him out of here to Omaha. But for me, I look for MJ to be a part of the future still. And then there's a guy, and this is a little baffling to me, guys, and maybe you can shed some light on this for me, but Drew Waters was a guy back in March that I thought would have a much bigger part or play a much bigger part on this team, especially given how weak that our outfield was. And, Drew Waters in Omaha this year, 285 average, 12 homers, 60 runs batted in, 20 steals. I'm a little bit surprised that the Royals haven't given him more of a chance. They've only played him in 7 games this year. I think he's had 2 call-ups. Now, I don't know. What I will say is I forgot to look up what his options are. And so maybe that's a big part of why he's not playing. But another guy that I think got 1 call-up this year and no at-bats was Nick Prado. Looking at our outfield, if you don't want to go out and sign somebody, in terms of 2 guys that, you found Vinny at first base like we were talking about. Salvi's going to be playing some backup there. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Royals still have any hope for Nick Prado going forward. If he gets a chance to play some outfield this spring, and we'll see if his back comes around. Or, again, I'm still holding out hope for Drew Waters. I don't feel like from where I'm sitting that the Royals have given him a fair shake at the big league level. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I expected a lot more. When we did the first preseason podcast, but it's just been one of those things that we knew it was going to be a crowded outfield. It was always going to be a crowded outfield with mediocrity, as we stated earlier this season. But, another guy we talked about was Nelson Velasquez. Another guy that was in the outfield, and now I forgot he was even on the tean at all in the organization. It's just been a crowded outfield. They've had some steady. I appreciate the steadiness of the roster throughout the season, and even for a majority of the season, the lineup. I feel like that kind of got a little unhinged when Vinny went down, but I think it got crowded. he's had a good season, and he had some real hot streaks down in Omaha. But if you're not, I think what it comes down to is you have some veterans. You have MJ, who's going to get playing time. Isbell's going to get playing time because he's elite out with defense. And you signed Hunter Renfroe, so you're not going to just not play him. And he was having he recovered from his early season struggles too. So I think I think what it comes down to, and I've thought about this more than I probably should have this season, is it might be one of those things where they just want to get him at bats and just keep him playing baseball. So we'll see. Maybe next year's the year. Maybe they, who knows what happens. But I still have high hopes. I still think his talent is good enough for the big league level. It's just a matter of when they can get him out there.
And that's a fair point. I mean, Brad, anything on Drew Waters?
I was just about to say that. I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but that's a very good point, just to keep him playing, because I think we would all agree he's better than Garrett Hampson. But if he's not going to play every day, he might get rusty, and he might play just like Garrett Hampson.
Maybe Drew Waters needs to learn second base or something. I don't know.
All things. Well, let's highlight a few of those guys that we talked about back in March. Michael Massey was a guy very early on in the podcast. I think I asked Brad, what are your expectations for Massey? And Massey right now, 256, 13 homers, 41 driven in. He's had some back issues. Those have been plaguing him all the way since his days back in college. So nothing that the Royals didn't know about. And he's had some stints on the IL. But overall, Brad, pleased with Massey's year?
Yeah, other than the injuries, I guess not. Yeah, but he's been inconsistent sometimes. But I feel like if he didn't get injured, he would have had a pretty solid year at second base.
It would be fun to watch him in 162 game season, no injuries, because he's one of those guys that just. I feel like most of his inconsistency comes from just that IL. Oh, now he's got to rest him, so we don't put him on the IL again. And
timing.
It's just because when he gets going, man, he's fun to watch. It'd be a fun. Hopefully, maybe in the future they can figure out a way to keep him healthy off the IL, even if it's a little bit more time on the bench. Maybe have a better option on the bench to help him at second base. Because he's been great. I've enjoyed it. I feel like every time he gets going, he's hitting home runs and playing really good second base. So
his power, defensively, he won a Gold Glove down in the minor leagues, so you knew that the defense was there. And then it's been a little bit surprising to me. I'm not sure I realized, his home run swing is there.
He's got that pop.
Given some more time at the big league level, I could see him in 140 games hitting 17 to 20 homers and playing a solid second base. Next up on my list here, a guy that I've kind of been both. At times I've been very high on and very pleased with his play, and then I get very frustrated and yell at him, and that is Maikel Garcia. Brad, your thoughts? Just to give you a rundown, 237 average, 58 RBIs. Brad, before we came on, said, but he got like 40 of those in the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah, he was insanely hot the beginning of the year, and you just kind of wondered where he went. And something you and I, Matt, have talked about pretty consistently is he does not run out a ground ball to first base, and it's so frustrating. Like, I see Bobby Witt Jr., who just signed a 10-year, $200-something million deal, and he's hustling on every play. Mm-hmm. And apparently it's just too much for Maikel to ask for Maikel Garcia.
Save the legs. Save the legs.
You guys already asked me to play third and second. You never tell me. Yeah, and it's not a speed issue because he's got 37 steals.
Yeah.
So he can clearly run. I still say he's a part of the future. I would love to see him hit the ball the other way. And I think one thing, and I'm going to give one of my favorite broadcasters of all time, Royals broadcaster since '99, Ryan Lefevre, a shout out here, even though he will not listen to this, but I'm going to go ahead and shout him out anyway. He had a good thought at the beginning of the year, because if you remember, Maikel had several home runs. Like in the first few weeks, he matched his home run total from 23. So Ryan's thought was that, okay, all of a sudden he forgot who he was. He's not that. He's got some pop, but he's more a gap-to-gap line drive hitter. And I think that could explain some of it. Now, as for not running balls out, I want to get 3 hours of Mervil S. Melendez running balls out to first base. And I want to go in the video room that I don't have access to. I'm going to sit down and very nicely say to Michael, look, see, running hard. Now, there's nothing to say, like, he has all the steals. Maybe there's something going on potentially with, I don't know. I'm not giving him an out. He just hasn't run the ball out as much as I would like to see. I'm sticking to it.
I think there's a couple things. First, that was probably my biggest miss outside of Drew Waters from the first podcast was I think I had him as one of the guys that needed to have a good season. And I expected to have a good season. I remember I brought up, his winter ball, he was, they won the championship on his team. He was hitting home runs. Yeah. The hustle thing. I think Eric Hosmer brought up, in Kansas City, they'll love you as long as you play hard.
Oh, he's talking to Bobby.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting point that it came up on this podcast because it's true. Yeah. Kansas City is we don't have a lot typically going for us on the baseball field, but man, if they play hard and you can expect that at least you can watch people that care. I think he does care, and I think that's kind of just a personality trait that he's got to work on. And I don't know, just when things don't go his way, which majority of the season is kind of it's been up and down. He struggled with that, but yeah, that's one of my biggest misses there. I really expected more. I don't know. We'll see in a few months how I feel, but I may be all out on Michael Garcia. We'll see.
When you say all out, give it up.
All out.
Wow.
I'm very close. Just because we'll see.
This hustle thing got to you more than I thought.
Nah, it wasn't even the hustle thing. It wasn't the hustle. It's I expected. I was really deep down expecting a stat line to be like 280, 20 home runs, 25, 30 stolen bases. Just something like really consistent all season, just like because I just felt like he had it in him. So we'll see. Maybe I'll calm down over the next 6 months, and I'll be all bought right back in.
It makes me wonder too, because I've watched several interviews with George Brett, and I know he's still in touch with the organization, and I have a feeling if George sees that, he's going to say something, because he's always saying he worried about what he could control on the field. No one was going to hustle more, no one was going to play harder, no one was going to have more fun. And for me, it's, to go back to the personality trait, Lucas, of Michael, to where Merv's having a terrible year, he's still running everything out. You just have to do it. You never know, when a guy's going to make an error, and you can be safe. Or
last night,
yeah,
wasn't that Michael who hit it right? It was going to be a game-ending double play, and luckily it didn't happen.
That's Blanco beat it out to second. Yes, last night against the Giants. And Brad was out. Was it the Cubs game? Maybe you were out with your dad, and
yeah. It looked like a infield, grounder that he could have easily beat out, and for some odd reason, 3/4 of the way down the line, he just let up. Yeah. It baffles me.
And, yeah, and not to beat up. I think he's got, not to beat up on him too much. I think he's got a future. I'm not all out on him yet. And we'll see where you are in March. But what if he turns into a playoff hero? Then we're all sitting here going, man, and he extends in late innings. In a tie playoff game, Michael Garcia beats out a play.
And then Vinny drives him in.
Do you want to touch on that? You guys, we did talk about that. I don't think
we did a little bit.
Yeah. You think you would like to see Vinny come back?
I would be.
I mean, obviously for next year.
If we make it that far in, I would be ecstatic if he came back.
Even as a decoy is what we were talking about. Just put that bat in.
I'll go into Vinny a little bit in just terms of I hope they find a way, and it'll probably take I would imagine it takes another year to really find his value price-wise. Because I don't know, obviously you're not going to throw a ton of money at him right now, but I really hope I just feel like Bobby and Vinny would be just give me 5-10 years of Bobby and Vinny. That just feels like a good 3-4 lineup, 2-3, 3-4.
Jack Caglione comes up.
Jack Caglione.
Jack
Exactly.
Tani.
Yeah, exactly. So I just, my big thing with Benny is, yes, I hope he comes back. I hopefully make it far enough in the playoffs for him to have a chance. I'd love to see him be able to finish off this season. But even longer term, I hope they figure out a way in the next 2 years to sign him to something just to keep him. It just feels like a great, like, out of a core of like 4 or 5 players, if you could keep 2 players for the extended future to try and keep the winning window open, those are the 2.
Well, I feel like, and maybe we didn't mention this, maybe we did, apologize if I'm being redundant here, but the Royals all year, up until like the last month or so, have been so consistent with runners in scoring position. And that's been something that in the past has just killed the Royals. And so the offense is there in a lot of ways, and you've got that core of hopefully Bobby and Vinny, and like we were talking about Salvi earlier, still seems to be able to hit just fine and have his legs underneath him. There's no reason that if we can't make a few moves in the offseason that we build on this year, and we're right back here next year talking playoffs. And hey, we're still in the playoff hunt right now, so not to make it all about next year, because we still have a chance, and it's all about getting hot at the right time. Anything you guys are looking forward to or expecting from the Royals in the postseason? It's a broad question, so.
Well, just getting in would be cool, man. It would be so cool. I do appreciate, I think, the wild card being a 3-game series over a 1-game, just because of the nature of, in 2014, if they weren't able to come back in that 1 game, but they could have taken 2 more out of the Athletics there. But I don't know. I just want to see him play postseason baseball, just because that just there's nothing more exciting to me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot of, I would say, and I'll let Brad talk a little bit more about the postseason expectation, but I'm just happy to be here.
I was gonna say, I had 0 postseason expectation, beginning of the season. So this is fantastic where we're at right now. And like everyone has said, you just got to be hot in the playoffs. You just have to play above 500 baseball for 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks, and you're World Series champion. I mean,
ask the Rangers.
Yeah,
there you go.
2014 Royals.
Exactly, yeah.
We swept our way to the World Series, but
Exactly.
we weren't the best team going into the playoffs. We just were the hottest at that point.
I remember going back to 14 to reminisce for just a minute. It's just like every series we went into, they don't have a chance.
Yeah.
They don't have a chance.
Yeah.
They don't we won every game all the way up to game 1. And
That was so fun.
I think the thing that I would hope for, and this is a moral victory thing, I hope they go as far and win a World Series and do all that and get hot at the right time. One thing I'm rooting for, since I think it's going to be very difficult for them to win the division at this point, I would love for them to get a wild card, win that series, and get a home playoff game, a few home playoff games in there. And just because with the Chiefs the way they are right now, and then if the Royals can get hot and gain some ground here, it just builds so much camaraderie. Not to get into politics or anything else going on in the world, but it adds a lot. It adds to everybody's enjoyment and kind of takes your mind off the day-to-day when times can be pretty rough. So not to get too much into that, but very excited for the playoffs potentially, and it's certainly a surprising season, and look forward to sitting down with you guys again in the future. Anything you want to add before we
I have one
here?
surprise topic.
Do it.
That
Jump
I'm
in.
just very curious your guys' opinion on as
Will
fans.
Taylor Swift be at a playoff game?
Ooh,
Yes.
That's a good question. Didn't even think about that. Good question. We'll save that for later.
Yeah.
Now, I was curious your guys' opinion on attendance. Attendance this season, I feel like it goes back to the point of we don't know what it feels like to be a good baseball team, so people are always, you see 82, 83, 84 wins, and you're like, well, do I believe? Do I buy in?
Nosotros
Or
creemos.
are they going to get absolutely cold at the wrong time? Everyone's attention span is to the Chiefs, and I don't know. I find it interesting that they pull on a Friday night, the last homestand. They're fighting for the playoffs. And
22,000.
22,000. I just maybe I have high expectations, and I can't say anything because I'm not out there. But I'm kind of shocked in general throughout the season as a whole that it's not a little bit more, and how that if next year, because of the way this season has gone, is there a sizable increase in attendance next year because of this year, but you don't see it initially? I don't know. It's an interesting topic. I just want your opinion on it.
I think you hit it on the head there with we're still not used to having a good baseball team. I think everyone other than 14 and 15, and 14, I don't even think our attendance was that great.
No, because Ned got on the crowds in September.
Right, that's
Yeah,
right.
but 15 because they saw, what happened previous year and they started off good. Attendance will increase. And I also think a little bit of it is the stadium issue.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the stadium issue.
Yeah.
I think if the Royals had a downtown ballpark this year, they would have at least on average 5,000 to 10,000 more fans per game.
Completely agree.
Look at other teams.
As much as I love Kauffman Stadium,
Here we go again.
as much as I love Kauffman Stadium, it needs to be downtown
That's a fair
if they
point.
want a better attendance.
That's a fair
nightly
point.
I
attendance.
don't know. You guys have sold me on it. I thought I was going to get out of here without the stadium coming up, but I can appreciate it. And I will say, I want to go back on one thing. I don't think I already covered this. I'm kind of all over the place today, but I asked a question about analytics earlier, and I was talking about Matt Quatrero. And I want to make very clear, I think he deserves to win Manager of the Year with this comeback. Regardless, I don't always agree with the decisions. I know that he knows a lot more about baseball than I do, even though in my heart of hearts sometimes I like to think that I could go manage a Major League game right now. And yeah,
Get a W.
not going to happen. But so many ins and outs I'm sure that the everyday fan just doesn't see. But did want to give a shout out to Matt Quatrero because as far as turnarounds go, and the rest of the coaching staff as well, again, 54 and 106, and we've got 8 games left sitting at 82 and 72. Still could potentially win 90 games. That's huge.
Yeah. I think because I think the other betting favorite is what's his name? Stephen Vogt from Cleveland.
There's a few guys in there. Stephen Vogt's definitely in there. Rocco Baldelli with all the Twins injuries.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's funny that's all AL Central, considering the thought before the season about the division.
We were going to be so. Even we said,
everyone.
we didn't even know who our biggest threat was going to be. So.
Yeah, I think we nailed it at least with. I guess we weren't going Twins, but Twins are still a threat. So, it's an interesting conversation to have. I think if the voters were being honest with themselves, JJ Piccolo is Executive of the Year, Matt Quatrero is Manager of the Year, because it's about the turnaround and the team that's on the field this year. But that I would vote for him.
And Bobby should be.
I was just about to say the same. As long as
Bobby's
we're on
the
that
MVP.
train, yeah.
I mean,
Kyle Isbell's Gold Glover.
not to disrespect,
I'm jumping off the train.
Not to disrespect Judge's season, but he's got Soto and all those guys behind him.
That's a fair point.
That's a really good.
They didn't lose 106 games last year. Bobby Witt Jr. has taken this team to, incredible level from the year.
You're going to go with the new heights and make a
Yeah, I was
fancy
about to,
reference.
and then I'm like,
I feel like I haven't said Bobby Witt Jr. enough, but I will agree with that. And I'd say, if to go back to that one question to wrap this up, for the postseason, all I want to see is Bobby Witt Jr. hit like a home run postseason, have his moment. I want Bobby Witt Jr. to get to that point, get on the national level, have a huge impact, and have his star grow in the postseason.
Throwback. I would love to see that in the postseason, but I know the home run derby, I think, put Bobby Witt Jr.'s name into a lot of people's heads.
Oh,
That
I
was
had
an incredible performance.
I had no bigger goosebumps / just anxiousness during the last round of the home run derby than any other Royals game this season. It felt like I was in the playoff mindset, Chiefs game. It doesn't matter. It's I was amped on that home run derby, and I hadn't been amped like that on a home run derby ever.
Yeah. It was so much fun, and he
Stud.
Within
performed
feet.
so well.
It was
Oh,
just
so
a couple
close.
of feet. Yeah.
So close.
And you know that no disrespect to I can't even think of who won it. Teoscar.
Yeah.
No disrespect, but you know that stadium in Arlington was rooting for Bobby all the way.
Oh, yeah.
I know my house was.
Yeah.
And Ellie was like, "Oh, he didn't win?" I was like, "No."
Can I
so
give
close.
you? I got to give you a side note because we brought up Ellie in the first podcast. What was it? 3 weeks ago, a month ago, you guys went out to a game. I get this video from Lucas, proof that you and Randy are raising your daughter right, because Lucas's daughter sitting on his lap and they're both Salvi, top of her lungs.
That's
It was
right.
awesome.
We got her.
Yeah.
We got her going. She also chants Bobby when she sees him come up on TV. So we're getting in there. Now we just got to have a winning team for multiple years. That's all.
We're
Just
gonna
keep
get
it.
there.
Just keep
We're
it
gonna
going.
get
Just
there.
raise Ellie on a full run of winning baseball.
How lucky is Ellie? She's growing up in Kansas City when we have the best football player and the best baseball player in town.
Only two good things that come out of Texas that I've ever seen. It's
Beautiful.
it's been a great. Really enjoyed talking to you guys and looking forward to, not just next year in the Royals as we move down the road, but potentially seeing them win some playoff games and maybe make a run to the World Series. Also, if any Chicago White Sox players are listening, which I'm sure you're not,
Chris Getz
like to
probably
make
is.
a
Executive.
last minute appeal for you guys to play spoiler and sweep the Detroit Tigers in the last series of the year. Nicky Lopez, my guy. Let's do it.
A little easy.
Nicky Lopez, baby. All right. My name is Matt Thompson alongside Lucas Devine and Brad Beck. I cannot talk, so it's probably a good time to sign off. But thanks, guys, so much for joining me today. And we will see you next time.